I'd like to welcome everyone to the third and final speech of the morning. We still have 3 speeches after lunch, but the first one, this is the final one for the morning session. We're bringing back to the microphone Chris Ferrara, who yesterday he talked about Fatima's false friends, and today he's going to focus on the third secret, and the title being Proof that the Third Secret Has Not Been Released. Please welcome Chris Ferrara.
Thank you, John. I have made a commitment to the translators to speak more slowly. And I told them that we have 2 problems. I'm an American and I'm an attorney. And attorneys learn quickly that you have to say as much as possible in as little time as possible until it's your turn to sit down. So I'm sorry about that. So what I'm going to do today is try to use a written text and confine myself as much as possible to the underlined portions of the written text, which are in the translation booth back there. So there may be less spontaneity today. But I'll do the best I can to keep it interesting for you. Now, I want to begin with a point I neglected to mention yesterday when we were discussing the false friends of Fatima, and in particular, the world apostolate of Fatima. It's one of the more telling points, but in my haste to finish, I omitted it. Let me cover it today before I begin the main talk. When Pope Benedict went to Fatima, he spoke about a cycle of death and terror in the world. And he said that this cycle of death and terror was crying out to heaven for retribution. And yesterday I discussed this EWTN tete-a-tete between Mr. LaCourte, the executive director of the American branch of the World Apostolate of Fatima, and Father Apostoli, about their presentation of what I call Fatima Light. And they were confronted with this issue of where is peace in the world when we have our own Pope speaking of a cycle of death and terror, crying out to heaven for vengeance 24 years after Russia was supposedly consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Where is peace? At one point, Mr. LaCourte said that, well, according to Monsignor Guerra, the former rector of the Fatima Shrine, we're living through the period of peace. And I note the irony that Monsignor Guerra's name means war. But that's a ludicrous contention, and they know it. So they came up with an alternative explanation. And this is a demonstration of how far these people are willing to go to maintain the party line. They will say anything to preserve it from refutation by reality. So, looking at this cycle of death and terror in the world, here's what Mr. LaCourte said. He said that the faithful aren't doing their part. Oh, the Pope has done his part. Consecration is accomplished. The third secret has been revealed. But we're not doing our part. And you remember yesterday, our part is to pray and do penance. It's all on us now. We have to pray and do penance. And he said, and I'm quoting, we're not doing our part, so we're slipping back again. And we can fall right into that problem we had in the past, and nations are again on the precipice of perhaps being annihilated if we don't wake up. Now, isn't that marvelous how they've covered their bases? First they tell us we've avoided the annihilation of nations because Russia was consecrated and we had a period of peace. But that obviously isn't true. So he's saying that basically we're slipping back into the same scenario again, and nations could now be annihilated. So if that does happen, They've covered themselves. So basically, the version of Fatima that they're giving us is a very rubbery thing. They bend and twist it any way they wish to make it comply with the party line. And they're making it up as they go along. And that's a good example of how far they're willing to go to do that. Now today the focus is on the third secret of Fatima. And I've written a book on this, and there are lists of pieces of evidence that will show you why there must be a missing text that would explain the ambiguity of the vision. Today I want to focus precisely on the ambiguity of the vision as a primary indication of why there must be a missing text, because the vision is ambiguous. In the official Vatican booklet published back in 2000, Cardinal Ratzinger described the vision of the Pope on the hill, the bishop dressed in white, being executed, as difficile da decifrare, difficult to decipher. Now that is curious, because Our Lady did not come to earth to give us a cipher. That would require a secret decoder ring in order for us to understand it, which decoder ring would be provided by the Vatican Secretary of State. That's not what she came to do. So the mere fact that we have something difficult to decipher indicates that we have a problem concerning the Vatican's disclosure back in 2000. Now this is curious for another reason. If, as the official interpretation maintains, the vision of the Pope on the hill being executed outside a city filled with cadavers is merely a kind of graphic depiction of events of the 20th century, as Cardinal Sodano maintained and as Cardinal Bertone maintained until he began backing away from that position recently. If it's just the film of 20th century events transpiring and many different popes are compressed into one pope, as they claim, and we see the sufferings of all these popes in the 20th century, then why would it be difficult to decipher? Why would they not have simply declared back in 2000 that here we have a visual depiction of the second secret of Fatima, the second part of the great secret, which foretells the end of World War I, beginning of World War II, the spread of Russia's errors, the sufferings of the church on account of world communism and the evils that world communism spawned. Why wouldn't they simply have said, well, this is all perfectly clear. Here we have it, visually depicted, the second part of the secret. They didn't do that because they know the vision pertains to a third part, which is not a part concerning 20th century events. That's why they say it's difficult to decipher. If it were simply a depiction of 20th century events, we would have our answer about what it means. We would still need Our Lady to confirm that. But no, they say specifically that this, in fact, this vision pertains to the third secret of Fatima. And in fact, during a press conference, Cardinal Bertone was pressed on whether he thinks the vision pertains to the second part of the secret or the third part of the secret. He had to admit that he believes it pertains to the third part, and therefore something other than 20th century events. Therefore, there's only one conclusion. The vision depicts events that occur after the 20th century. Otherwise, their position is nonsensical. Now, if the vision predicts literal events, things that really do happen in the future, then the Vatican's position regarding the official interpretation collapses for that reason alone, because these literal events are not 20th century events. And as the Pope has revealed during his pilgrimage to Fatima, indeed, the vision depicts future realities of the Church, which are revealing themselves little by little, in other words, not yet completely, in the Church today in a really terrifying way. today, now, and for the future, not in the 20th century. That's all the proof we need to demolish the official interpretation. And in fact, in a radio broadcast, it was either the day before or the day of the beatification of John Paul II, Cardinal Bertone stated that the third secret of Fatima is compiuto in parte, fulfilled in part. A major retreat from the official interpretation. And he also said that, nevertheless, we must not be catastrophists, suggesting that there are perhaps catastrophic elements that we should not be afraid of. Otherwise, why warn us not to be catastrophists? So we have a major retreat from him. So let's focus on this whole problem of the fundamental ambiguity of the vision once we accept, as we must, that it does not depict events of the 20th century. And here I would focus, as a kind of a case study, on an article written by a certain Antonio Borelli entitled Some Friendly Reflections for the Clarification of a Debate, meaning the debate over the third secret. Now, like so many of the propaganda pieces for the official line, we have a kind of a Stalinist title here. Some friendly reflections for the clarification of a debate. And you can be sure when it comes from the party of the innovators or the party defending the official interpretation, that title will mean exactly the opposite of what it states. They're unfriendly reflections for the obfuscation of the debate. Now, here's what Borelli does. And it's typical of the party line, but it's coming this time from someone who holds himself out as a traditionalist. And in many respects, I suppose, he is a traditionalist, which is an interesting phenomenon because we now have people advancing the party line, even within the so-called traditionalist camp, who, for whatever reason, have persuaded themselves that they are serving the cause of the church and the cause of Fatima by attempting to justify the party line. I don't really know if Borelli is a tried and true traditionalist, but that's where he's coming from in terms of his presentation. I am the friendly traditionalist, and I'm going to bring clarification to this debate. But he reveals his motive right away when he says that Antonio Socci, and for the translators, I'm on page 3 of my text. Look at the underlined portion. When he says that Antonio Socci is irrationally absorbed by the idea that there are two texts. He goes on to say that Socci imagines things, that he is guilty of wishful thinking, and that his book, Il Quarto Segreto di Fatima, the fourth secret of Fatima, has drawn the faithful into, quote, a futile hope of new disclosures, causing what he describes as a lamentable loss for the cause of Fatima. Well, the shoe has dropped already. This is not a collection of friendly reflections. He's out to defend the party line by suggesting that Socci is irrational. But there's nobody more rational than Antonio Socci in this entire controversy, because this is a man who thought that we were irrational and began to study the evidence and reached the conclusion that we were completely rational and that the party line is irrational. When someone who begins as an adversary completely converts and becomes a friend of your position, that's powerful evidence that there's merit to our position. He had no motive to change his mind. His only motive was to destroy our position. He ended up adopting it. I suggest that Mr. Borelli is irrational. Now, he says that some people, and speaking of Borelli, in the traditionalist ranks have accepted, and I'm quoting, the revelation of the third part of the secret by the Holy See on June 26, 2000, with a submissive spirit, without, however, penetrating in general its very rich and profound meaning. Those are the good traditionalists. But then he goes on to say that others, disappointed at the content which they consider innocuous, refuse to accept the idea that the third secret has been published in its entirety. Well, there you have it. You have the good traditionalists who are submissive and the bad traditionalists who are still looking for some missing part of the secret. Submissive to what? Submissive to what I discussed yesterday, the false appearance of authority being exercised in this manner by people who have no authority. The Secretary of State and the various approved organizations who have no right whatsoever to bind us to their position on the matter. And here's this so-called friendly traditionalist suggesting that we should have a spirit of submission to a non-authority with no authority to bind us. Is it too much to say we're dealing with a double agent? I don't know. But objectively, that's what's going on here. Now, he wants the good submissive Catholics to accept Cardinal Bertone's and the Vatican Secretary of State in general, to accept their party line. But Borelli states, with a kind of magisterial flourish, that he is going to heal this division between the good traditionalists and the bad traditionalists by making what he calls, and I quote, and we're on page 4 for the translators, an effort to clarify, to the degree that the available documentation permits, the obscure points, so that all may have at their disposition the necessary elements to clear away their doubts, end quote. Now, here we have this ridiculous situation. This fellow Borelli, who has no authority on the matter either, is going to assist us and clarify all of our doubts from the available documentation. You see, Our Lady didn't do that for us, but Mr. Borelli will. And we really need Mr. Borelli's assistance. He's coming to the fore to solve the problem for us. And he's going to do that by attacking Sochi, the one man in the other camp among few who was honest enough to go with the evidence led to our side, which is based on the evidence. Now, he demolishes, or he purports to demolish, Sochi by creating a phony characterization of his argument. He sets up a syllogism, which he attributes to all of us. And his syllogism is basically this. And we're toward the bottom of the 4th page of the text. According to him, we make the following argument. Certain facts or declarations by personalities regarding Fatima indicate that the third secret must contain terrifying elements for mankind and for the church. Minor premise 1. Minor premise 2. Now, the text revealed by the Vatican does not contain these terrifying elements. Therefore, the conclusion, the third secret must have a complement not yet divulged, which contains these terrifying elements. Now, Borelli says, I have refuted this argument because the vision contains terrifying elements. Therefore, it is the part traditionalists claim is missing. And Sochi's entire argument ends up in a nihil concluditor, his ponderous Latin phrase, because Sochi is looking for something we already have. Well, that's very neat, but that isn't our argument. Our argument, more accurately stated, is as follows. This is our true position, the position that Sochi has arrived at. Certain facts or declarations by personalities regarding Fatima, such as Cardinal Ratzinger, and I'm on page 5, by the way, Cardinal Ratzinger, Cardinal Ottaviani, Cardinal Odi, Father Alonso, Father Schweigel, John Paul II, and Sister Lucia herself, indicate that the third secret relates to an unprecedented crisis of faith and discipline in the church, amounting to widespread apostasy, as well as a material punishment of the whole world. Minor premise 1. Minor premise 2. Now, the text revealed by the Vatican does appear to depict some kind of post-apocalyptic scenario, but with no explanation by the Virgin, the very messenger of God, concerning how and when the scene of death, devastation, and the papal demise will come about, or how it relates to a coming crisis in the Church disclosed by those who have read the third secret. Further, minor premise number 2, Cardinal Sodano, Cardinal Bertone, and other Vatican personages insist that the vision depicts nothing more than 20th century events culminating in the failed attempt on the life of John Paul II in 1981. An interpretation that has caused skepticism among the faithful, confusion, and disunity. As Mr. Borelli himself notes, there's disunity over the meaning of this vision, which Our Lady of Fatima could not possibly have intended when she delivered her message to the Church and the world. The conclusion, therefore, the third secret must have a complement, not yet revealed, which contains the explanation of Our Lady of Fatima herself, for only her words can establish once and for all the full meaning and precise significance and historical context of the vision. That's the argument truly stated. Of course, the vision tells us something about what's going to happen, but not nearly enough, because it isn't explained. It isn't enough to say, well, it depicts some terrifying events, therefore there's nothing more to say. No, those events have to be explained. That is our argument fairly stated. Now, Borelli proceeds immediately to contradict himself. He suggests that Sochi has failed to recognize the terrifying events in the vision. Therefore, Sochi has failed to recognize that we already have what he is looking for. But then a few pages later, he says that Sochi does recognize the terrifying events in the vision. He says that Sochi recognizes them and therefore understands the meaning of the vision. And according to Borelli, the meaning of the vision is this. Now then, he writes, the meaning of the vision is precisely that. A great chastisement that looms over humanity and the Church. Then he goes on to give us his interpretation of the chastisement, and it involves a total destruction, not a total destruction rather, but a partial destruction of the world, and a great return of humanity to the Church, which he says will parallel the grand retour, the great return of souls to the Church in France as part of a great Catholic movement that occurred after World War II. So there'll be another grand retour, like the one in France after World War II, only it will involve the whole world. None of that is in the vision. He made it up. And he also contradicted himself. Because on the one hand, he's saying we should accept the Vatican's interpretation, but on the other hand, he's offering his own interpretation, which contradicts the Vatican's interpretation. And it's nothing more than his opinion, not a single word of which is supported by words of the Virgin Mary. Because the Virgin, and I'm on page 6, says nothing at all about the meaning of the vision in the vision itself. Borelli is literally putting his words into the Virgin's mouth in an attempt to supply explanatory content that is clearly missing. Now, since, according to Borelli, we know the meaning of the vision in some general way, because he's just explained it to us, Sochi's entire thesis collapses. That's his position. But he's using the phrase meaning of the vision in an equivocal way to signify a general understanding, some idea of what it depicts, the nucleus of the matter. But he hasn't answered these questions, which only the Virgin Mary could answer. Who is the bishop dressed in white that is being executed? Is it really the Pope? And if so, which Pope? Who are the executioners? And on whose orders did they carry out the execution? What city is in half in ruins? Is it Rome, or is it perhaps a Portuguese city? Given that the Pope is executed on a hill before a wooden cross, apparently made from cork oak, the Bark of a cork oak tree is visible on this cross, and the cork oak tree happens to be widely cultivated in Portugal. Is it just one city that is in ruins, or is it the whole world? Who is the angel whose beams of destruction radiate toward the earth? And what event, or events in particular, have provoked this expression of divine wrath? Does the Virgin succeed in repelling the rays of destruction that we see in the vision? Or do they ultimately reach their destination at some point, producing the scene of devastation that we see in the vision? The rays are repelled, but we also see devastation. Is it too little too late? Is there only a partial salvation of the world? Is the damage mitigated? Are some nations annihilated, as she predicts in the second part of The Secret? We don't know. Does the vision depict the aftermath of a world war or other global calamity? What is the precise nature of the catastrophe that ends with the half-ruined city, filled with bodies, and the execution of the Pope, and then the execution of innumerable members of the hierarchy and the laity? When will the events that precede and culminate in the vision take place, bearing in mind that Our Lady of Fatima was quite specific about when the events predicted in the first two parts of The Secret, the Great Secret, would occur? She even specified that World War II would commence, quote, when you see a night illumined by an unknown light. Now, if she is going to give us that kind of a clue, that kind of a clear indication of when World War II will begin, are we supposed to believe that she said nothing about when we can expect the apocalyptic events in the vision to occur? Nothing at all? No warning? Something even worse than World War II, we're given no clue as to when it will commence. Something so terrible that Sister Lucia could not even commit it to paper, even though she had already committed to paper a coming annihilation of nations. And lastly, how does the apparently post-apocalyptic scene in the vision relate to the crisis of faith and discipline in the church, mentioned by so many persons who have read the Third Secret in its entirety? The vision shows a crisis endured by the church, but it doesn't tell us what brought it about. It shows the end result of a process, shows the Pope being executed, and a slaughter of members of the hierarchy and of the laity outside a devastated city. Again, these are literal events, and we know they can't be events of the 20th century. We have an enormous problem, don't we, with the official interpretation. We are being left in the dark about events which could well claim the lives of everyone in this room and many of the people in the population of the world. So these questions raise other questions which could go on forever, but the point is made. We have only some idea of what the vision means, but we don't lack the one thing that would do what Borelli purports to do: resolve our doubts and create unity among us. That one thing would be the Virgin Mary's own explanation, without which we have no idea of exactly what the vision signifies, which is precisely why Cardinal Ratzinger says it is difficult to decipher. Does anyone here on the internet, in the Catholic world at large, really believe that Our Lady left us a dire warning about future events that is difficult to decipher, and that we need Cardinal Sodano and Cardinal Bertone to tell us what it means? Does anyone really believe that? Of course not. Now, an enormous problem for Borelli in giving us what he considers to be his perfectly clear explanation of the vision is that it completely contradicts Cardinal Ratzinger's contention at the time of publication of the vision in 2000 that the vision is not easy to decipher and that we need Cardinal Sodano to help us out. So he himself is in dissent from the official interpretation. At the same time, he's chiding traditionalists for not accepting it in a spirit of submission. Make up your mind, Mr. Borelli. Now, even as he tries to refute Sochi by giving us his explanation of the vision, he implicitly rejects the Vatican's official line. And yet, in an earlier book by Mr. Borelli, called, let me get the title, Fatima, Past or Future, he simply accepts the official interpretation without offering us his gloss on it about the Grand Retour and the partial devastation of the world. He accepts, for example, the idea that the angel with the flaming sword is really man devising nuclear weapons and bringing about his own destruction. And also in that earlier work, he argues that he's free to offer his commentary on what he thinks the vision means. Well, so are we. So what is Mr. Borelli's problem in the first place? He's like a swinging door, a revolving door. He doesn't know which position to adopt. So all told, when you go through the friendly reflections and you compare it with Mr. Borelli's previous work, you have an excellent example of the utter confusion in which the official version leaves us. Because according to Borelli, there are 8 possible ways to interpret the vision of the bishop in white. Number 1, the vision is perfectly clear if we accept Borelli's explanation. It's a future chastisement. There'll be a great return of the faithful like in France. Or, number 2, it's difficult to decipher, so we should look at the official version and maybe consider that that's accurate. Or number 3, the vision is about the future destruction of much of the world by an actual avenging angel. Or number 4, the vision is really about man threatening to destroy himself with nuclear weapons. Or number 5, the vision depicts a pope being executed by soldiers outside a half-ruined city. Or number 6, it merely depicts the persecution of the church in the past, in the 20th century, and not one pope but all the popes of the 20th century. Or number 7, all of the above. Or number 8, some of the above. You can mix and match. You can say that it has no definite prophecy about the future, but only a tableau of past events. Or you can say that it is the prophecy of a supreme chastisement in which the world is partially destroyed. Or you can combine some of them and say it's both. Past events, future events, whatever you like. It's a smorgasbord. And this, we are supposed to believe, is the position in which Our Lady of Fatima has left us. Now, in the fourth secret, Antonio Sochi asks the question that Borelli's own confusion presents to us. And this is the question which, in and of itself, exposes the official version as simply, sorry to be so blunt about this, a fraud. He asks this question: is it possible that Our Lady would appear in such a spectacular manner at Fatima to give us a message/warning that is so important, yet, however, remains incomprehensible, confusing, or susceptible of different and contrary interpretations? That's the question. There's only one answer. Absolutely not. The answer is a resounding no, and Mr. Borelli's own confused attempt to demonstrate that the vision is perfectly clear, with the assistance of Mr. Borelli, proves that something has to be missing, and that would be the explanatory words of the Virgin herself, which the Vatican has decided to withhold for whatever reason. It is precisely because we lack those precious words that the vision, standing alone, is not easy to decipher, and in fact is impossible to decipher with any degree of certitude. Now, there are other proofs concerning the message of Fatima. I'm going to go through them very quickly, just to let you know that Borelli has missed a few points. But I want to address one obvious objection to what I've just said today. Am I accusing Cardinal Bertone of a deliberate fraud on the Church? Well, I covered this in the book and elsewhere. And it's not for me to say that he is intending deliberately to defraud us. I think the explanation Sochi gives is the most palatable one. They know there is a text. They've read the text. Text is terrifying, apocalyptic, probably a condemnation of the entire course the church has taken over the past 40 to 50 years. But they have persuaded themselves, maybe subjectively they actually believe this, that this text is not authentic, that somehow it is, as the Vatican's official booklet says, annotations by Sister Lucia concerning the phrase in the fourth memoir, in Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc. Now, that phrase in the fourth memoir is not an annotation by Sister Lucia. It is a direct quotation of the Blessed Virgin that appears between quotation marks, meaning that she recorded these words of the Blessed Virgin and left the etc. to indicate the remainder of her statement. Now, if the Vatican is going to call a direct quotation of the Virgin annotations by Lucia, then it would follow that if there is a text which contains what is embraced within the etc., they would have reduced that text to annotations as well. And they would have deemed it to be something personal to Lucia, some comment she made on the vision, and therefore not authentically a part of the vision. And they would have persuaded themselves that this devastating text, which clearly indicates a double chastisement of the church and the world, is just not authentic. And it would cause panic among the faithful. And it would discredit the Vatican and the entire course of the post-conciliar reform of the church. It just can't be true. And we just can't let the faithful read this. It will scandalize them and destroy faith in the magisterium. Maybe that's what they persuaded themselves of. But as Sochi says, reveal everything. The truth will set you free. If you think it's inauthentic, reveal it to us and tell us why you think it's inauthentic. Don't speak of an authentic text that you revealed in 2000, as they're now saying. Clearly suggesting, as Sochi has noted, that there's an inauthentic text lurking around somewhere. And that's why Sochi appeared at the auditorium during the telecast in September of 2007 when Bertone made a second attempt to salvage the official version of events by presenting his book again, which had already been presented. That was the pretext for this televised appearance. So she appeared at the auditorium. He stood by the entrance and waited for Cardinal Bertone to appear, so he could ask him one single question. The question he has never answered and refuses to answer. And the question would have been this. This is what Sochi said he was going to ask. Your Eminence, this is on page 35 of that text. Your Eminence, are you ready to swear on the gospel that the famous phrase of the Madonna, contained in the third secret of Fatima, noted by the Vatican in 2000, remember it was reduced to annotations, in Portugal the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc., is not followed by anything else? He was standing outside that auditorium waiting to ask that question, and as he recounts, Cardinal Bertone slipped in through the emergency exit to avoid Sochi, and Sochi was bodily carried from the auditorium. This respected journalist, this brilliant author, this television celebrity, this mainstream figure, a member of the Vatican Press Corps, respected by all the journalists present, was picked up and bodily removed by security guards. And that's a visual representation of what is being done to the missing text, to the whole truth about Fatima. It's being carried out of the auditorium and hidden from us by security guards called the Secretary of State, Bertone and Sodano. Now, I want to conclude briefly with a run-through of just a few of the key points, because Borelli says that Sochi's thesis, which he reduces to a thesis when it's at this point a patent fact, is not supported by the known facts. Borelli simply ignores the known facts. I'll conclude by going through them, because some people who may be watching this don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about all the evidence that supports the existence of a text. And there are 33 quick little points that I can probably summarize in less than 10 minutes. And that will be the conclusion of this talk. Here's all the evidence Mr. Borelli ignores. And it is ignored by the other perpetrators of the party line on Fatima, which, I have to say yet again, the Pope himself has totally discredited during his pilgrimage to Fatima. Number one, Chia said the text is in the form of a letter. We don't have any letter. Number two, those who have read it, and there's a list at the bottom of page 35 for the translators. Number two, those who have read it have revealed that it speaks of a coming state of apostasy. The vision doesn't say anything about apostasy. The Pope did at Fatima in 2010. He talked about attacks on the church by sinners from within. That's not in the vision. Where is it? Number three, Our Lady clearly had more to say following the etc. Cardinal Sodano and Cardinal Bertone refused to tell us what follows the etc. Something clearly does. Number four, Our Lady explains absolutely everything in the first two parts of the Great Secret of Fatima. But we are asked to believe that she fell silent when it came to depicting something approaching the end of the world. She had nothing to say about it. We'll figure it out somehow, thanks to the Vatican Secretary of State and Mr. Borelli. Yes, the fate of the world is in their hands. Number five, Father Schweigel, on his mission to interrogate Sister Lucia, sent there by Pius XII, told us the secret has two parts. One concerns the Pope, and the other, logically, he said, although I must say nothing, would have to be the continuation of the words in Portugal. Dogma of the faith will always be preserved. Number six, the Vatican press release in 1960 spoke of a letter and the words, which Our Lady confided as a secret. The words, something she said. Number seven, Cardinal Ottaviani read a text of the secret consisting of 25 lines. Cardinal Bertone admitted this. That Ottaviani spoke categoricamente, said Bertone on television, of a text of 25 lines. We don't have that text. Number eight, Bertone admitted, as I said, that the testimony was categorical. And number nine, we know a text of the secret was kept in the papal apartment during at least three pontificates. Pius XII, John the 23rd, Paul the 6th. They all have this text in the papal apartments. Where is it? It's in the Capovilla envelope, which Archbishop Capovilla admitted contained a text and was kept in the papal apartments. Where's the Capovilla envelope? We've never seen it. Number 10, John the 23rd read a text of the secret that was so difficult in Portuguese he had to have a translator. And yet other accounts say that he read another text that he didn't require a translator for. Two different texts. Where's the other one? Number 11, there are no difficult Portuguese expressions in the text that John the 23rd read without a translator. Number 12, there are two different Italian translations of the secret. One prepared for John the 23rd, and the other prepared for Paul the 6th in 1967. Why? They already had one. We haven't seen either translation. Number 13, three different popes, according to the records of the Vatican itself, have read a text of the secret on two different dates. Three popes read texts on two different dates. We're expected to believe they all read the same text twice for some reason. Doesn't add up. 14, John Paul II revealed through his spokesman, Joaquin Navarro-Valls, that he read a text of the secret in 1978, not 1981, within days of becoming Pope. Never been denied that he read a text in 1978. But the Vatican says he first called for the text in 1981. When asked to explain this discrepancy, Bertone said, well, I don't think it amounts to much. Did he ask Navarro-Valls to deny his report that John Paul II read a text in 1978? It would have been easy to ask him that. And Navarro-Valls would have denied it if it weren't true. Why didn't they ask it? Because it is true. And since we know that John Paul II read a text in 78, whereas the official account claims nothing was read until 81, they're hiding something. It's no other reasonable conclusion. If you were a jury, what else would you think? Number 15, Archbishop Capovilla said that he created this Capovilla envelope. He wrote names on it, the names of people who read what was inside. He wrote his own name on it. He wrote the dictation of John the 23rd, who basically said, I'm not going to judge this, I'll let my successors do it. The envelope exists. They never produced it. Therefore, they're hiding something. Number 16, Paul VI read a text of the secret, opened the Capovilla envelope in 1963, according to Capovilla himself. And then he sealed the envelope up again in 1963, according to Capovilla himself. No one denies this. But then the official account says, for some reason, he got the envelope again, the same envelope we're told, and he reopened it in 1965 and read it again and resealed it again. Sure, that's the way it happened. He read the same text twice for some particular reason, but the official account never mentioned that until we, through our efforts, Father Gruner through his efforts, and the efforts of Solideo Paolini, produced testimony about the second envelope. All of a sudden, confronted with the second envelope, we're now told that, oh, it was the same envelope all along. He just took that one, sealed it, and then 2 years later decided to unseal it and read it again. Yes, it was the same text. That's not credible. When asked by Paolini in 2006 whether there were two different envelopes and two different texts, which is obvious, now it really can't be denied, Capovilla said, per l'appunto, which means in Italian, exactly right, or exactly so. Capovilla, number 18, has never retracted that statement. Number 19, Bertone has not even asked Capovilla to retract that statement in particular. He's had him say many other things, but he's danced around that particular statement to that particular person on that particular day, when that is the very heart of the matter. You simply ask Capovilla, did you say that to Solideo Paolini? Did you say per l'appunto? Yes or no? Bertone has access to Capovilla and never posed that question. Number 20, Bertone, having admitted through Capovilla, who appeared on his TV show, that there is a Capovilla envelope, refuses to produce it. He won't show that envelope to the world. Why? Something in there is being hidden. There's no other reasonable conclusion. Number 21, he goes on television in 2000, or rather 2007, and reveals not one, but two sealed, identical envelopes pertaining to the third secret of Fatima, having told us all along that there was one envelope, having had Sister Lucia authenticate one envelope, according to the official account. Yes, this is my envelope. Now all of a sudden it's envelopes, plural, and they both have an identical warning not to be opened until 1960, which warning Bertone had told us for 7 years does not exist. And then he revealed on Porta a Porta, number 22, a third envelope, unsealed and addressed to Bishop da Silva by Sister Lucia. So then we have two inner envelopes sealed. We have Sister Lucia's outer envelope, unsealed. And then we have the big envelope of the Bishop of Fatima. So we have two outer envelopes and two inner envelopes. Two outer envelopes that are not sealed. Two inner envelopes that are sealed. Well, what does that mean? Outer, inner, outer, inner. Two ensembles of envelopes, outer and inner, two documents, two texts pertaining to the third secret of Fatima. Or are we to believe that one text was placed inside a nested assemblage of 4 different envelopes? Ridiculous. And again, the Capovilla envelope has never been produced. They refuse to produce it. Number 23, we know that when Bishop Venanzio held up the outer envelope that he had to a bright light, he saw inside an envelope, and he measured the exact dimensions of that envelope. And guess what? As Antonio Socci noted, the measurements of that envelope do not correspond to the measurements of the envelope displayed by Cardinal Bertone on television. And the measurements, number 24, of the envelope and the sheet of paper taken by Bishop Venancio, not just the envelope, but the paper, are different from the measurements of the envelope and the paper containing the published vision of 2000. Yet another discrepancy. Number 25, Bertone revealed only weeks before he appeared on television in his book, Last Visionary of Fatima, that in April 2000, Sister Lucia authenticated sheets. The Italian word is fogli. A folio in Italian is a sheet of paper. More than one sheet, fogli. She authenticated sheets of paper in 2000. When we brought that to the attention of the world in various publications, Bertone came out with a new version of his book, and as Mr. De Carli revealed here when he spoke at our conference, oh, that's been changed. Now Sister Lucia authenticated paper. She no longer says, these are my sheets. She says, this is my paper. They changed her words. Problem solved. But in the introduction to that same new edition of Cardinal Bertone's book, the Pope says that he prayed and read attentively, I fogli, the sheets, pertaining to the third secret of Fatima. They couldn't change the Pope's words, you see, in the introduction to that book. And in Last Visionary, number 26, Bertone revealed that there was also an outer envelope of Lucia's bearing the note, third part of the secret. This is what he said in his own book. There was a note on the outside of an envelope by Sister Lucia that says, third part of the secret. By Lucia. Where's that envelope? We've never seen it. Did they throw it away? Is it lost? I mean, the discrepancies mount and mount and mount. If I were prosecuting this as a murder case, the circumstantial evidence would be so overwhelming, I think the defendant would plead guilty. Number 27, I've noted this already, as the evidence mounts concerning the cover-up, all of a sudden Bertone begins talking about an authentic envelope and an authentic text. And he said this, the only folio that exists in the Holy Office archives, knowing full well that there's a text in the papal department. And then Bishop Seraphim of Fatima, this is number 28, who appears on the television show that Bertone staged in 2007, says, the third secret of Fatima has been revealed in an authentic and integral way. That's a very strange way of putting it. Did you reveal that communication to your business partner, Mr. Witness? Oh, yes, I revealed it in an authentic and integral way. Not yes, not no, but hedging. Because the Bishop of Fatima is certainly not going to say yes simply if he knows there's another text lurking around. And number 29, in an audio tape prepared by Sole Deo Paolini, Archbishop Capovilla said, in response to the question if there's anything else pertaining to the secret, that yes, there is an attachment to the text of the vision which has never been produced. And that report appeared in the Italian press the next day concerning the audio tape. And the newspaper account said this will keep the polemic, as the newspaper account stated, alive. Certainly will. And the existence of this audio tape has never been denied by Capovilla or by the Vatican. That was reason number 30. Number 31, Cardinal Bertone has failed and refused to ask Sister Lucia while she was alive, or Archbishop Capovilla, a single question that would penetrate to the heart of these matters, whether he knows anything about the famous etc. Number 32, to this day the Vatican has issued no official denial of any of the allegations in Sochi's book, any of the allegations in my book, any of the allegations by anybody that have been published anywhere concerning this cover-up. And lastly, number 33, Pope Benedict XVI sent Sochi a note, as he says, quote, concerning my book, thanking me for the sentiments which have suggested it. Now, why would the Pope send such a note to Sochi, who had just written a book, accusing the Vatican Secretary of State of a veritable conspiracy to conceal from the Church and the world the rest of the third secret of Fatima. So I conclude by saying that Borelli's declaration that the existence of two different but related texts of the secret has no support in the known facts, none, mind you, is simply a joke. Borelli has no mastery of the facts involved in this controversy. Many people are unaware of the facts, and so they readily accept the official version of the third secret with that spirit of submission that Borelli would counsel upon us, which would be a false submission, a submission to people who have no authority and who clearly have an agenda which is not the agenda of Our Lady of Fatima, and which is redounding to the peril of the Church and the world. So let me end by saying that this conference and other events like it represent a true service of the Church, a true service to she whose message was meant for the good of humanity and for the good of the entire Church, for the salvation of souls, for the protection of not only the Church but the world from a calamity the official version of the first of the third secret of Fatima has blinded us to. And it is our duty as Catholics to see to it that the truth continues to be proclaimed at every possible opportunity, so that this change in the Fatima landscape we've witnessed over the past few years will finally ripen into a full disclosure of the third secret and that triumph of the Immaculate Heart which we all await. Thank you.